about 3 seconds. So no, that's perfect.
Okay.
My
I had
God,
to
you
come outside because I was really hot and I had to cool myself down.
yeah, I know what that's like. Believe me. You're so we're live. You're so connected to, so there's no coincidences, just like everything else that happened this morning. There's no coincidences. So this is really important. I want to give people a few minutes. You look absolutely fantastic for somebody who's working out in the bush every day.
Ah, well, it's all that fresh air and sunshine.
Yeah.
No EMFs, no electricity
Yeah.
surrounding me. It just really brings some clarity.
Yeah. So you're off for a few days, I guess.
Yeah. I've got 10 days home,
Oh yeah.
which started last Sunday.
Yeah. And how's your husband doing? I heard what happened yesterday. He okay?
Yeah.
He okay?
Yeah. Oh, he's doing it really tough. Really, really tough. He's been
Yeah.
through a lot in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a struggle, but being home makes it so much easier, to go through, someone you love having a pretty life-changing injury
Yeah.
while you're not here is a big thing to do. But as part of the feminine, I had to step aside and I had to let the masculine rise up and go through what he was going through.
On his own.
Yeah,
Right?
it was really difficult. But, we all got through it and now I'm here and I'm able to support and hold space and move on.
I can totally relate to that. I can. So
Yeah.
but that's that, and really that's just true for everybody,
Yeah.
At this
Yeah.
time it's the masculine energy. But if you just say any soul, we got to stand our own. Nobody's going to save us and nobody's going to do
Oh,
it for us.
absolutely. And we're all going through it, whether it's
Yeah.
masculine, feminine, whatever it is, we are all going through it in
Yeah.
our own unique individual way, in our own story.
I just want to say hi to everybody. This is a really special show. This is a show, and this is a special soul. Monique is a special soul. And I'm going to give a little backdrop on it for those that are live and then they come in on the replay. But this is the perfect Soulogy energy to me. There's no spit and polish. There's no preparation. There's no, hey, well, what are we going to talk about in depth? It's done in the spontaneous, in alignment with the truth as it's vibrating in our lives every single day. This is what I've always understood is that, yeah, I am soul, you are soul, and we have that common denominator. But the other common denominator that we have, and the only other one we have, is that we're all going through the same thing. We're going through this transition. We're dealing with the soul. We're dealing with the ego. We're dealing with whatever else the universe shows to us. And on the surface, it looks different to everybody because the universe speaks to each one of us in a unique fashion. But this is a special broadcast. So if you come on to this on the replay or the live, please stick around for a little bit because this is where our highest transformation, transmissions, downloads, channelings come from having a conversation, an honest conversation where we come to the table and we don't know the answer, but we come to the table to have a discussion that's thought-provoking because we know the universe isn't stagnant and we're not stagnant either. We're made in the image of. So hello to everybody. And let me say a special hello to Shanine, who's, I think, changed her last name, even though I've been watching Outlander with Morgan. And Mulan, I think, means my little darling. So her name is now Shanine, my little darling. But she's on her honeymoon with her beloved in Mexico. So just sending you love, peace, power, protection, and all those things. So let me give you a little backdrop, everybody, and thank you for coming. If these shows resonate, please share so we can stay above the algorithms of Facebook. Thank you for your love and support and contributions that keep us going every day because it works. It's been working, even though it's a day-by-day basis, which is what all of our journeys are. So this is Monique is really special to me on a personal level. I was talking to Morgan since September of 2015. And Morgan at the time was in a school, transpersonal healing, I think, kind of an alternative to the old conventional 3D paradigm where she met a bunch of people in a class. Monique was one of them. A lot of Morgan's friends back in South Australia have been friends for many, many years, and they had a tight sisterhood that expanded as a result of this class that they all attended, or these courses that they attended over a couple of years. So Soulogy on the linear timeline looked like me for a long time. We now have discussed it, and I realized in retrospect, after getting transmissions, understanding that Morgan and I actually met 60 years ago with a monad and agreed to come down here and do what we're doing. Monique left. Monique, are you still there? Uh-oh, she popped out. She'll be back. So what I wanted to say was that, you know, for me as an individual who was trying to get to this woman who didn't have any money, how can I make this happen? How can I make the fairy tale occur? What can I do? It was very difficult. And so, of course, Morgan and I had a relationship. This went on for a couple of years. And I didn't really know any of her friends. I didn't see any of her friends involved with Soulogy. And one period of time when we were getting suppressed on Facebook, I went to YouTube. And I went to YouTube. And can you hear me? Monique. Okay, wait a minute. Let me get your microphone's off. So I'm gonna try.
Oh, I'm back.
Okay. So I was just let me just finish up that story. So I had struggled and struggled and struggled. I didn't have a home. I didn't have a car. I knew I was supposed to be doing Soulogy. I'm trying to connect with Morgan. The human's trying to show her my value. At the same time, I'm faced with this colossal challenge. And so we were getting suppressed on Facebook. And one day, and I went to YouTube. And because we'd not been on YouTube, I did a live, and there was about 6 people in attendance. And one of them was Monique. And she said, energetically said to me, I believe in you. I believe in Soulogy. I've been watching you, and keep going. And it meant so much to me because it was such a low point for me. And then later, Morgan told me that she was surprised that Monique had told her, ever since you mentioned Todd to me a year before, or whatever, year and a half before, I've been watching Soulogy and I believe in it. So she's a very special sister to me. She's a very, very powerful, healer and soul who does energy work one-on-one with people. And she's also very reluctant and likes to stay in the background, like a lot of these divine feminine that have been doing this work for many, many, many years. But she's also a fireball. She's an honest, straight up, direct person who was not, as much as she loves me, would not hesitate to tell me whatever the hell she thinks. And this is what's precipitated this particular broadcast. Today is the full lunar, or the partial solar eclipse. And it's a powerful, powerful period, as many of these have been recently. A lot of stuff happened today. We had a broadcast today that wouldn't go off. There was some dissension in the ranks, or some points of contention. It brought up a lot in me. It brought up a lot in Morgan. It brought up some things in Monique, who again is very quiet and tends to stay in the background, but walks softly and carries a big stick. And so in the perfect synchronicity, she contacted Morgan and said, I think we need to discuss something. It's the same thing Morgan and I had been discussing all morning, unbeknownst to Monique. And I think it's an important topic. So we're going to talk about discernment. We're going to talk about discernment, and we're going to talk about spiritual confidence, and we're going to talk about pedestals. We're going to talk about giving our power up and taking our power back. And taking our power back, and I'm going to start with this. Taking our power back has got nothing to do with anybody else. It has to do with the value we hold upon ourselves. So, having said all that, thank you, everybody. Welcome, Monique. I love you. I love you. I want to say publicly, I fucking love you. If I say the F word, I really don't care. But so, value, discernment, pedestal, power over, empower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What a big talk up. I don't even know where to start now, Todd. Okay, so, we're all on this journey. Oh, it's starting to rain. Don't rain. We're all on this journey together, and we really need to start stepping up and discerning what is true for us. There are a lot of things out there. We are unique people. We see into dimensions. We see things that many humans cannot see, spectrums of color, spectrums of light. We hear things that, oh gosh, and there it goes now. We hear things that people just can't hear. And so we really need to be discerning on what is true in our heart, what is true for us. It's a big thing to say, but there are people out there who just want to take advantage. And we need to be able to discern who they are. We need to be able to hold their space in love, but not fall for their trickery.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we hold our ground and we value ourselves enough to be completely honest and say, I call bullshit. I call bullshit on this one. It's trickery. You're allowed to do that. It's okay.
I agree. And I totally agree. We've given our power away for so long, and we all kind of know this. And I don't want to pull up anybody in particular, because this is not about people. It's about energy.
Absolutely.
It's about energy. And sometimes the energy has a face of a person. Sometimes the energy has a face of a situation or an occurrence. But one of the things that came to pass today was we had somebody on who has created a lot of interest, curiosity, intrigue, and rightfully so. Once we were able to get the connection worked out, we had what I thought was a pretty good show, considering language barriers, considering the explanations that he gave. And again, this is not about him. What caught my attention was when we were trying to get on to do the show, and I'm just going to speak plainly and spontaneously, and I'm putting my best heart's intentions out there. I'm not throwing rocks at anybody, certainly not the gentleman or anyone else I might refer to. So as we were trying to get this show off the ground, there was 100, 125, 150, 175 people that were interested in this program because of the images this gentleman had put out. Now, just to give a disclaimer real quick, this gentleman came on, and one of the things that he said that really jumped out at me was, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. And everyone has to discern for themselves. We're using this as an example. As we were trying to get the show started, a couple of women sent messages and made comments in regard to some alleged improprieties, which was not new to us in these circles. We've had some things occur where there's been accusations about the masculine, the wounded masculine, people in power utilizing their gifts or purported gifts to gain an advantage in a power sense and use it for exploitation and that type of thing. So it brought up a lot of me, and what jumped out at me wasn't about what people were saying about this person or what people were saying about that person. What jumped out at me was the number of people that were ready to defend someone or something that they didn't know the whole story on, simply based on the sensationalistic aspect of what their expressions were. It has nothing to do with the people or the person. It had to do with the fact that these 175 people, and I'm not saying all of them, that many people were making comments of throwing in their support and their belief blindly behind something or someone without taking everything into account, like a herd mentality. And pedestals are a part of the problem. And I'm going to hand it over to Monique, because I know she's got something for this. But the pedestal thing, the guru yogi thing, it has to go.
Yeah, well, it comes back to personal sovereignty, doesn't it? We need to believe in ourselves as our own higher authority. Throughout the journey with Soulogy and on Facebook, I've been repelled by it so many times, is this pedestal. You know, it's the worshipping of people. I want to be heard, and I want to speak, and I want to be able to speak freely, and I want to connect with people authentically. But it's this pedestal, it's this putting others above yourself. It's got to stop. It's just nuts. We've done so much work and we've come so far, and we need to support each other in authenticity.
Yeah.
And when you do see something that doesn't ring true and isn't authentic to you, it's okay to either switch off or say, this doesn't resonate with me. This doesn't feel right to me. And it's okay to speak up if you see other people using that pedestal and using that idolation of another, because they really need to come back to ground and ground it into themselves and trust their inner self and their inner knowing.
You know, and here's the thing, and this is what I've observed, and we had an occurrence about 2 or 3 months ago, and then it's not out of the ordinary or new that I've been attacked over 8 years. Morgan and I, when we came together more publicly, Soulogy, and something occurred 2 or 3 months ago on a show. We had no idea about it. Many accusations were made about this person who had been put on a pedestal. And what I saw was blame. I saw self-righteousness. I saw ego. I saw wounded children, period. Okay? It's not about the individuals. It's about the people who are projecting and the people who are giving up their power to others. And the people that are pointing out this about that person, this about that person. And it made me kind of ill. And to the point where people were making videos publicly naming Soulogy, publicly naming Todd and Morgan. This is not about Todd and Morgan. It's not about Soulogy. I'm just giving an example. I'm giving an example that when we're focused on other people and what they're not doing right, or what we think they're doing so well that they're greater than us, but still an externalization, whether you're looking for love or you're looking to blame a victimizer, okay? Your point is, it's your deal. Now, when this happened this morning, I'll be honest with you. I woke up this morning before anything happened, before we attempted to make a broadcast, and I had a sick feeling. And I said, I'm not doing this again. I am not going to compromise and hurt my soul. I don't understand what the energy is telling me, but I know something doesn't feel right. And I did not honor myself, and therefore I did not honor my guests, and I did not honor my brothers and sisters who came together for the broadcast, you know? And I'm not condemning myself and I'm not judging myself, but what I'm saying is I've learned. Spiritual confidence is part of the package. I told Morgan an hour ago, I'm upset with myself for not listening to myself, okay? That even if you tell me something, I still have the ability to say no. If it doesn't feel right to the soul, it doesn't feel right. It has nothing to do with morality or ethics. This has to do with to thine own self be true. I am soul. And that's really as complicated and as simple as it really is, you know? And so discernment, pedestals, we put someone on a pedestal. Morgan's told me this several times. We're just setting them up for failure, you know? We're just
it's not good for their journey either. You know, it disempowers us and it disempowers them because it gives them a false sense of power. I mean, in the end, it's turned out to be a wonderful experience. You know, it's given us an opportunity to come on here and talk about some things that really needed to be talked about. But yeah, it does raise that initial thing of you didn't feel right about it.
That's right.
And you went through and did it anyway. Yeah. Maybe that was divine guidance in the end. Who really knows? But here we are now, and we've got an opportunity to discuss these issues, which are really, really important, especially at this time. especially at this time when the masculine is going through so much, and he's coming up to step into his power, with the feminine being open-hearted and 100% there, willing and open to support, and have him join her in this journey in union.
Yeah. Somebody who is was referred to earlier by me put up a great post a couple of days ago. I thought it was, because I've been trying to express something. I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to discuss this spontaneously with you. You know, we're talking energy here. And yes, it pretty much falls in line with our physical incarnation. And yes, I realize Morgan and I are very much a physical representation of feminine and masculine. I'm very masculine, he's very feminine, and so on. So this post that came up a couple of days ago, the person was talking about the divine masculine and talking about what's happening with this divine masculine. Now, I know the divine masculine, or let's say the masculine, has been the louder of the two genders. And a lot of what's been coming out of his mouth has been wounded. Most of it, all of it, right? Me included. But something happened on the way to the party. He got stripped down to nothing. His balls and his genitals were cut off. He had nothing left to offer, not even his sexual prowess, not his manhood, nothing. And I'm living proof as I'm becoming that which I feel that I can be, divine masculine, divine soul. I'm living proof that it's worth that. It's worth giving all that up. Now, the reason I reference this post is because I've been struggling with something. How can you say, as a man, that you had, and I'm not talking about Morgan, I'm talking about energetically speaking, my own journey. How can you, as a man, feel that you haven't been allowed to speak when all you ever did was talk? You know what I mean? And I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a new man in the house. There's a new masculine energy rising, and he hasn't been heard, just like she wasn't heard. What convolutes things and confuses things is all he ever did before was talk. But he's got something to say. Not that it needs to happen now, not that it needs to happen over and above superseding her voice, but in tandem with her voice. And I don't know why I'm saying this, but I know I'm supposed to. So
yeah. Well, the thing that rings out for me in that is, it was a lot of talk, but it was all ego. It was all distorted ego and wounded ego, and now the ego is understanding what I am is. The ego gets it now, and the ego's taken a huge transformation. It's no longer in this wounded place. It's now coming to a place of balance.
Yeah.
And the ego is taking its rightful place because the ego is important.
Yeah.
We can't function as a human without ego, but it's just about bringing it into balance with the energies and with the integrity and authenticity of ourself, so that it's actually driving from a place of wholeness and oneness.
Yeah. And maybe that's what I was getting at. It has nothing to do with the masculine. Maybe what I'm getting at is that, unconsciously, is that the voice that was suppressed in her is the same voice that was suppressed in him. And now we're finding that balance, and the dialogue and the frequency and the vibration that's being created, the portals, the vortex, is that voice that's been suppressed, whether it's a man or a woman. Morgan has a question to you. How can we expand our awareness of discernment and the need of it?
Okay, so we expand our awareness of discernment by practicing it. The more we practice discernment, the more it's going to expand. So by practicing discernment, it can be as simple as, what do I want to eat? And you discern it. You go into your body and you say to your body, what do you need for nourishment? And it's about talking to yourself as a whole being and not just fractions and parts of yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, really tune in to your wholeness, and practice discernment. Geez, it's taken me a long time. You know, I haven't always discerned. I've been impulsive. I've, you know, taken people on face value, which I continue to do.
Yeah.
But I also listen to the energy inside myself when I'm presented with people and opportunities and situations. What was the other part of that question?
She said, no, let me find it. How can we expand our awareness, which you answered, and the need of it? So what's the need for discernment?
Well, to keep yourself balanced and grounded,
Yeah.
to keep yourself in wholeness and authenticity. If we're not being authentic to ourselves by practicing our discernment, then we can't be authentic with anyone else.
Yeah. Shaz Hargreaves says, we know when it's discernment as there's nothing attached to it.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. And then there was another one here, which is a great point by Barb Bradley. So when we have these occurrences, be they public or private, we can remember the gift, the opportunity to expand. She says, these things are coming up for our highest and best good. Discernment and following it sometimes requires examples in order for us to learn. And as we know, one example is sometimes not always enough. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it's continual practice, because we're going to make mistakes. We all do. It's part of being a human being. You know, and none of us got to this place by using our discernment in full all the time. We got here because we have made mistakes, and it's part of bringing us to where we are now. You know, we're really opening up that heart center, and when you're fully in your heart, the heart doesn't lie. You know, you speak to your heart, and you know what is right and what is wrong for you. You know exactly when you're in alignment.
Angelia LaRue, those of us who seek truth will seek it in all things. This is a way to discern. Seek the truth, not the distraction from being presented, which is perfect.
Yeah.
I think, like what you said, look, the only right or wrong is in our own little universe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, we had a great show yesterday, and it was a big step for me because I have gotten volatile over the years, and sometimes I can get emotional and my shadow comes out and whatever. And I'm a strong personality, so I can be, you know, less than becoming. And I'm learning, you know, it's not about me. But we had this show yesterday, and I had never talked to the gentleman, a beautiful man named Chris Hall, who does his own podcast. And I knew nothing about what he did. And so it started with, what do you do? You know, and he was talking about the importance, the primary importance in our existence begins with nutrition. And I made a joke and said, I just ate a hamburger, which I had. And he said, oh my God, Todd, you didn't do that, did you? And we started to get into this discussion. But the point of it wasn't about the things that were said. For me, it was an elevation. It was a shift, or evidence of a shift, because I was able to have a conversation, not make somebody wrong, not get in their face, but have a diplomatic conversation and talk about where I'm coming from, and he talked about where he was coming from. And I felt the energy in the last 10 or 15 or 20 minutes of it was what I brought up earlier. Maybe what the masculine's finding, maybe what the feminine has found in this finding is the same voice. It's the voice of listening. It's the voice of self-respect, therefore mutual respect. And maybe that's where we're at. Maybe that's what this discernment is all about, is about allowing us a little bit more contrast and giving us the opportunity to make decisions or make choices based on our discernment to help us build confidence in how we feel, not needing that external validation or reinforcement anymore.
Absolutely, and that's really important. I find in this age of political correctness, people don't feel that they can speak what's true for them. And it's really important that we learn to dialogue with each other. We don't have to agree with each other, but it's important to respect where the other person is at. We're not all the same. You know, we are one in our hearts, but we're not all the same. We are on different journeys. We have different stories, and we're at different places in our journeys. And, you know, I don't always agree with people, and I don't always believe in some things that are said, but I can still respect that person and the perspective that they're coming from. It's important to see a perspective greater than your own.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, I read something years ago, and I used to read when I was a good boy. But I used to love, I do love Malcolm X. And I remember reading his autobiography by Alex Haley. And so I was very impressed that Malcolm X read the dictionary when he was in prison from front to back. He read the Bible from front to back. Then he found Islam by divine experience in prison. But after that happened, and he became fully embraced Islam and the Nation of Islam, he said, I always educate myself on those views and people that oppose me or oppose my work, because I want to know every single thing about them. I want to know where they're coming from. And I always found that to be so powerful, to put yourself in someone's shoes, no matter how opposed you may be to them. And I think that's the thing.
Yeah, and that's another another danger point that I see in the way things are currently working with our social media, is we design it so that we see what we want to see, and anyone who opposes what we're thinking or where we're at is demonized. And it shouldn't be like that. That's where growth happens. You know, when we see opposing views and we really listen, we deeply listen to what the other person is saying, and we try and understand their perspective. It doesn't mean they're going to change our mind or make us see things differently or change who we are, but we can still honor the perspective of other people, and that's where we really get great growth.
Yeah, because
I don't actually know a lot about Malcolm X, but what I have heard is phenomenal human being.
Yeah, always, because even like the story goes, is he went to the pilgrimage from Medina to Mecca late in his life, and then he documented. I saw blue-eyed, white-skinned brothers, and at that point he was in separation, which was what I wanted to get to about what your comments were. You know, the whole idea of oneness and separation all happens right here. You know, and that's what I got this morning. And that's what I've been getting for a couple of weeks. At what point am I the separation? At what point am I the oneness or the separation? You know, and I've talked about this on a few shows over the last month, as I pull people up who make me uncomfortable. I pull the people up who will go on a video and make derogatory comments about me or Morgan or Soulogy. And I pull up their news feed. And I do it not because I'm perfect, because I'm not. I do it so I can move closer and closer and closer to oneness. And so I can remove the separation between them and me. Not because they're different, but because I'm not healed, you know? And I really struggle. A lot of us struggle with a mother or a father or an ex partner, you know? These are the places where we can find that integration and clear that separation and you know, what somebody said earlier, I think it was Barb Bradley, is these are opportunities for us. You know, we've had this pattern before of saying, I am that, but I'm not that. Well,
Yeah.
you can't be that if you're not that. So we've had these patterns where we've chosen a side, you know, and now we can look at these as opportunities for personal growth rather than pointing the finger at somebody else and saying they're lesser than me. Or to your point about the pedestals, they're greater than me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. That's perfect.
Let me say this. Chris Hall made a comment. Chris Hall was the guy that was on yesterday. Didn't mean to be judgmental. Thought Todd was past the animal cruelty phase. My bad. There's nothing to say it wasn't your bad. And I didn't mean to project anything like you were being judgmental. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that two people actually had a conversation of opposing views, or what seemed to be opposing views. Chris, and had a diplomatic conversation. And I felt, I don't know if you did, but the last 15 or 20 minutes, I felt a softness come over both of us. And that's that voice that I was referring to earlier that was suppressed in women for so long, and that I think some masculine, as they've been stripped down, are actually wanting to express. This is something that is not masculine, not feminine, at least maybe it's the same voice, is what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
we were told that Soulogy are the many voices of the children of the Mother Goddess. Now, in a literal sense, that sounds like a very gender-related thing. But in my reality, it seems like it's one voice. It's the truth. And the truth is just how Chris felt and how Todd felt. And the frequency of that truth is Todd allowed what Chris said, and Chris allowed what Todd said and accepted it as their brother's divine truth, you know.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing that happened, I didn't see the show, unfortunately, but I'll go back and watch it, is every single person that was watching that and involved in that got to see the integrity of two people with opposing viewpoints or in opposing positions come together and respect each other's values and perspectives. I think it's beautiful. And it just shows how far we've come, because, you know, since the 80s, we've gone so far in the opposite direction, where not only the feminine and not only females, but everyone has lost their voice. Everyone has lost their critical thinking, and that's what we're awakening. We're awakening our critical thinking, and that comes back to the discernment. Discernment is critical thinking. You know, we don't need to completely disconnect from the mind. The mind is still valuable, and it still helps us process things, and to reawaken that critical thinking is so important. And unfortunately, that starts in our education system, where that starts to get deprogrammed.
Yeah. So how do we, let's see where it was here. Okay. So there is a transition happening, and we started seeing it happening at the end of last year. And this is not about anyone. This is about energy. This is about, you know, just as we all know on an individual level, when we shift, we have a higher perspective. So before the shift, we realized something and we corrected it. We move up and we start to see things that are not congruent, or we're not aligned with, or that we were misaligned, that we couldn't see before the shift. Okay? I mean, we're talking about self-forgiveness, not judging ourselves, not being so critical. We're talking about something that we're all experiencing, each and every one of us. This critical thinking thing, I've never heard it put that way, but I love it. Because in order to have that, and we've all been our own worst critic, and we've all begun to accept and love ourselves more, okay, which translates into our interactions with others and our perspective of others and our reality of others. But how do we accelerate that? I mean, is there any other way than to just expand our openness. I mean, to be open to anything and everything, and own the fact that when we resist something, there's work for us to be done as opposed to trying to change somebody else.
Yeah, resistance is a big one, because I know I was in resistance for years. It's very much dependent on the individual. There is no fast tracking. There are fast tracks. I'm not right there. But, it really depends on what the individual soul needs, whether they can fast track and still have that full experience and still get down to the depth that they need to get down to for their soul evolution. Sorry, I've just lost that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
I was just looking for more stuff to talk about, and I was reading your note, which I don't want to read out loud. I'm just kidding. You're like me.
I don't care.
No. Well, I mean, okay. So there's a difference between calling bullshit from here, like in my own space, and I look at something and I say, I'm calling bullshit. And I may or may not say anything to that person, probably depending on how close I am to them. The closer I am to them, the more likely I would be to say something. That's a big difference between calling bullshit publicly, whether you're quote unquote right or wrong. You're calling bullshit publicly and damning somebody and defaming somebody and taking away from somebody at a grandiose level. That's got nothing to do with that person. It's got everything to do with you and the wounded child in you.
Yeah. I mean, there's ways to do things. You know, when you're speaking with a friend and when you go, oh, I call bullshit on that one, you've usually got a fair bit of insight into that. And I believe, to publicly come out and say to someone, that's bullshit, it's got to have a context.
Yeah.
It's got to have a context. You've got to be able to back yourself up and say, where is that coming from? Is that coming from my head? Is it coming from my heart? Is it coming from a wound? Is it because I see that someone is purposely trying to trick people and people are falling for it? There's a number of different ways and situations that can occur in. But you can also be tactful. You can also open up a dialogue with that person and go, okay, tell me more. As I've seen you do on your show. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about how you got there, how it works. Open up a dialogue, and you don't have to be aggressive in calling people out. You can just have a conversation, and sometimes people see, oh, look, that was a bit of a wound or a bit of bullshit I was spreading there.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to look at that behavior.
And isn't that a big one that we can all do? A big one being, we do things because the telepathy is it's beyond refute. Okay. It's gotten to the point where beyond refute, and we can't say, well, I didn't say that or da, da, da. But the fact that when we do something, when we act out, when we project, when we call bullshit in a public manner, or we do something that's out of line, is the value and the power and the strength and the blessing of that person, let's say it's me, going back to the other person and saying, hey, I was out of line. Yeah. I was out of line, and now I know, and now I'm aligned. And I apologize for raining on your parade or for what the energy that I thrust upon you. What I find is,
sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, what I'm finding is, and I've been guilty of it. And I'm learning. What I find is that we go back and we offer a bouquet of roses, or we go back and we tiptoe around the issue and try to do something nice or speak in platitudes, but we don't look right in the eye and say, listen, I fucked up, period. I shall be released. You know,
Yeah.
I have now said this, as opposed to the I'm going to beat around the bush and hopefully you're going to take me back in and we'll sweep it under the rug. I think it's a powerful thing that we can do when we've acted, and understandably so, in this transition that we call ascension, when we've acted in misalignment and then we gain the awareness and on the road to alignment, go back, the power of actually saying to somebody, I screwed up.
That's really important, Todd. And you've just brought up one of my core wounds. I was raised, it's really hard without going into the whole story, but I hid things, you know, as a child growing up. I hid my emotions. I hid a lot of things that I did. And I grew up in a very emotionally manipulative environment. I can't believe I'm coming out and saying this and alive. And it created that within myself, and I hid things, and it wasn't a malicious dishonesty. It was to protect myself emotionally, but then that perpetuated throughout my life. And you know, in the last 5, 8, 10 years, I've really had to go into that, and I've had to call bullshit on myself so many times. I've led myself down a fairy tale or a story, and I've had to say, come on, you're not being honest with yourself. It's time to woman up and be honest. And that was one of my really core wounds, was my hiding, my deception, my dishonesty. Yeah. And that's why it's so important for me now to be able to speak up honestly and with integrity and say, I haven't always done that.
Yeah.
But every day, and if I slip up every day, I try and become conscious of it, and I hold myself to a higher esteem.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it's all about. It's that sort of growth that is important. And if we're tiptoeing around people's wounds, saying what they want to hear when they want to hear it, they're never gonna be able to be honest with themselves. So it's really up to us with gentleness and compassion and love, to be able to say to someone, I think you're deceiving yourself there, and by doing that, you're deceiving me.
Well, too, and that's a good practice for us to use the same thing on ourselves.
Yeah.
Because
it starts with the self.
Yeah, but I mean, what you said earlier, you know, look, value is really coming up, self-value. And I'm wondering if that's the energy of this, some of the energy, and this is not my bailiwick, but some of the energy of this eclipse, because of what happened today.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it, touch it, feel it. And so it's like value is becoming more.
Can you hear the kookaburra?
What is that?
It's a kookaburra.
Is that a wild animal? Is that a bird? Was that a bird?
Yeah, it's a kookaburra.
Yeah. So the whole thing about value, okay, value, and I think about the fact that we see these imperfections and are quick to call bullshit outside of ourselves. How do we translate and therefore transform that within ourselves? How do we get to the point, if you know, and if you don't, that's fine. How do we get to the point where we can start to look at those other people or look at ourselves with the same amount of calling bullshit when we look at ourselves, you know, versus other people? It's a lot easier for us to look at other people and say, oh, this person's this and that person's that. How do we see ourselves with more clarity?
I think, you know, I think you've got to do a lot of self-work. You know, you've really got to be willing to pause when you have those thoughts in the first place. It's sort of like, oh, my bullshit detector's going off at this person I'm looking at or seeing or whatever is happening in front of me. You've got to be willing to pause and go, hang on a minute, am I judging? Is this really meant for me? Is this my lesson? You know, where is this stirring in me? Find it, work with it. You know, it's like when I said to you, I call bullshit, I paused.
Yeah.
I paused and I said, okay, what am I seeing here that is within myself? What's reflecting out of me?
Yeah.
And you know, yeah, it was my core wound. It was my past. It was my, you know, I don't believe that I've ever purposely deceived anyone, but working from my wounds, yeah, I was deceptive. And
Yeah.
so that's what it brought up in me. Different story, different situation. I still feel that because of the work I've done and the place I've come to in my journey, that when I see something that I believe is inauthentic, I'm going to back myself. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to be scared to say it anymore. I'm
Yeah.
going to come out and say, I'm sorry, that's not authentic to me. You don't have to bash a person or publicly shame them or anything like that. But you can say you're not being integral to yourself.
Yeah. If we stay at a job we don't like, or stay in a situation we don't like, or stay in a relationship we don't like, is that lack of discernment? Is that something else?
Oh, no, you know, there's so many factors that go into those things. If you're projecting outwards about your dissatisfaction, say you're in a job you don't like and you keep whinging and moaning and really projecting that out to everyone around you, then you need to look at yourself and go, okay, yeah, I need to do something about this because it's affecting my external world. When it's affecting you so deeply inside that, you know, you're completely out of alignment, yeah, you need to say to yourself, I need to do something about that. But there's many situations that you can be unhappy in your work, but it facilitates something that you are fulfilled in, or you're unhappy in a relationship, but you know that you're growing from it. And the timing's just not right to do anything about it. That is discernment.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, absolutely, it is. And I think that, like the for me, which struck a chord with me, with you, when you were saying that, that's why I remember wishful thinking. I remember being in a relationship or in a job and saying it's okay. It's and actually creating an image in my head that everything was perfect, and doing whatever I could to substantiate that with what I said to others and the things that I did and what I reminded people of that were involved in the situation, such as my kids. Everything's okay. Everything's fine. But I was not calling the bullshit out on myself. That's my point. That's my point. And that is deception, you know? And you know, we've learned, that's the other thing. This stuff is coming to us at warp speed. And my image is not based on what I did or how I felt about myself yesterday. It's based on how I am now in this moment. And I may screw up in this moment, but I have the newfound courage and strength to go back to the person and say, I screwed up. Or listen to their criticism, take it in, take a deep breath, knowing that nothing I can say is going to change anything, but my actions forward will, which is important for me. You know, it's important for me.
Yeah, and that shows a lot of integrity too. And yeah, it's just so important. Words just aren't coming. Go on.
No. We're about an hour into it anyway. So,
oh wow, that went quick.
Since we have,
I thought we'd be on for 20 minutes and that'd be it.
Jeannie Henderson said, I have found at times we need to experience what looks like bad discernment, because that is where the gift is growth and expansion. You know, that's a good point.
Absolutely.
You know, I get to the point now and I say, I don't want to answer this message, or I'm not going to do anything because I don't even know what to do. And I'd rather not do anything because I really don't know what to do. Now, there's a difference for me, and I don't know how this. Then there's other times, be it a linear timeline deadline or whatever, where even though I'm not 100%, I have to rely on my discernment and make the best choice in that moment. And it may not be, it may not come out perfect, you know, like peaches and cream, you know, it may not come out, you know, fluffy, love and light, but that's okay too, I guess, you know?
Yeah, and that's exactly what discernment is. Sometimes discernment is taking no action, doing nothing, saying nothing.
Yeah.
And other times you'll just know from your core, from your heart. It's sort of like, oh, it rises up in you, and it's like a spark, a fire is ignited, like what happened with me, which brought me to this live today. I had no intention to do this. The last live I did with you, I said to Morgan, I'm never doing that again. And here I am.
How do we learn to trust our instincts?
Oh, wow. By delving into your shadow, by looking at your shadow, by going in and saying, when did I stop trusting it? Because we're not born distrusting our instincts. We're born as instinctual beings. That's our first drives. And yeah, whether it's programming, whether it's wounding, whatever it is, we need to go into ourselves and look at our shadow and look at all the different aspects of ourselves and go, well, when did this stop working? Why did I shut this down? Yeah, there's big processes behind it. It's not something you can just go, ah. Oh. And then when you do make that mistake, when you do have a slip in discernment, be willing to look at it honestly and go, why did I slip up there? I'm going to try next time to catch it before it actually, you know, becomes a runaway train or whatever.
Yeah.
And ask myself the questions, where is this coming from?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a trigger, I think it was 3 mornings ago. And I think we were watching a show. We were watching Outlander, whatever it's called. Processing, you know, just watching it. And I got a text message from somebody. And and I've been pretty calm and cool, you know. And it just set me off. And I jumped off the couch and I said, yeah. And Morgan's looking at me like, oh, where'd that come from? But and I think I'm not saying this about myself, I'm saying this about all of us. Within 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, I caught it. And I said, oh my God, I got triggered. What is that trigger? Why did it make me uncomfortable? You know, and then I identified what I didn't like, which was basically people intruding on my space, you know, telling me what if. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, do I do that? You know? And I know it can be a little complicated sometimes because Morgan showed me a while back, months ago, years ago, how something can be active in my field that I may not even be consciously in agreement with, but it's still coming at me. And be that ancestral, be that disincarnation, whatever. One of the treasures of what's happening to us right now, if we are open and raw and real and vulnerable, we don't have to understand what it is, why it happened. We can just feel that energy and feel it's not incongruent and then work to make it congruent or whatever you want to explain it. I think that's one of the big advantages I've seen of what's happening this year. We don't have to.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if we obsess over the whys, we completely miss the point. You know, I'm a big fan of Carl Jung, and part of this process is making the unconscious conscious. We don't always need to understand why at first, but the why is going to come later.
Yeah.
We need to understand that, okay, this is unconscious behavior. I need to try my hardest to make this conscious. And most unconscious behavior when it plays out is wounding. My dog's going nuts, sorry. He's running around me like a mad thing.
I want to get back to the story about the goat, the dog, and what was it? When Morgan went
the cat.
to see?
I don't know, birds, cats, whatever.
They were all chasing her. Shanine said, this reminds me of something Andy Horry, 23-year-old out of England, had written a couple of months ago. But she said, I identified myself as a victim. Therefore, I saw everyone else as one and kept fighting away, protecting the victims. Ain't nobody a victim when you're listening from the 0 point. Andy Horry, 23 years old, Liverpool, London. He wrote a post and he said, if you're in a relationship, which to me means any interaction between two or more people, and you think either you or they are a victim, you are.
Yeah.
In other words, you are feeding that consciousness of victimization. Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can work within yourself as well. You know, you can have that victim persecutor thing going on inside of you. You know, I know I had an experience only a few weeks back where my inner critic became really loud and was really quite venomous and horrible. And I had to try and embrace that critic with love and go, I am not these things that I'm telling myself. And yeah, I had the whole victim persecutor thing going inside of me. So it can be our relationship with ourselves and then manifests outside to others.
Yeah, exactly. I want to ask you one last thing before we get off, because I've noticed when you write, I think what I've noticed is just my opinion, but what I've noticed is when you talk about the masculine, for me anyway, maybe it's because we're so connected, but really resonates with me more than hearing it from, women in general. But you really take that masculine in and own it.
Yeah.
And you say, my divine masculine was acting out today, or I'm making this stuff up, but you know what I mean. My divine but you're saying it is an I.
Yeah.
And I know you work around a lot of masculine energy, and you must be getting tremendous insight into what's happening vibrationally with that energy. But, I don't even know if there's a question there, but I see that. How has it always been that way? Have you always been able to tap into your masculine like that?
Yeah, I have. I operated from my masculine. My feminine was very, very demure, and very hidden for a lot of years. And I operated from the masculine, and I wounded the masculine, and the masculine wounded me. And so I've actually had a really, really long journey with my inner masculine. And it's manifested through my body, it's manifested through my psyche, and all of those sort of things. And I really have a lot of love and compassion for the masculine. I had to raise my feminine to be able to really look at the wounding of my masculine, because he'd protected me and taken the worst of the worst throughout my life. And so I really had to intimately get to know him, and I needed to raise my feminine aspects first.
Yeah.
And then jumped back into externally the world of the masculine.
Yeah. Well, point being is you had to raise the feminine.
I did. Yep.
That seems
because I had to be able to hold myself.
Yeah. That seems to be the the modus operandi, energetically for the whole realm, and for us, I guess, on a micro level. She's got to hold that space. She's got to step into her power, or he never will.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% true. Yeah, and
you look. Are you still doing sessions online?
I haven't been lately because my work schedule's just kind of taken everything over. But I have taken an extra 10 days off, so I'm going to be home for a little while this month, most of this month. So if anyone wants a session, they can message me. Yeah.
I would.
And I am happy to do sessions, but I can't do them regularly.
Yeah. Well, I would just tell anybody, if you are afforded the opportunity and you want to have a unique energy session with Monique, is a great candidate. She's I've always felt a lot of resonance with her. She works in the same fashion that Morgan does. No bullshit. Let's get to the meat of it. We don't want to hear the story. Let's clear it. And very honest, very bold, very raw, very authentic. So, if you guys are interested in a little expansion, hit Monique up while you can before she goes back to work in the bush. You know. So, Monique, I love you. Thank you for coming on and having the courage and the spontaneity and the intuitiveness and creativity to do that.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you all.
I can't wait till the next time.
Yeah, me too. Bye.
All right, see you. Bye-bye.